Hi, we're going to look at some word problems today. When you do word problems in my class, I expect you to do a 5-step process. The steps must be numbered and they must be the following steps. Step 1, write your find statement. Just write down from your word problem what you're trying to find. Step 2 are your let statements. There may also be a chart, a picture, buckets, something of that nature. Now step 2 is the only step that will change depending on the type of problem that you're doing. Step 3 is the equation, step 4 is the solution, and step 5 is a sentence that gives me the conclusion that answers step 1. 4 less than 5 times a number is 26. Find the number. We're going to start with step 1. Okay, we have the problem 4 less than 5 times a number is 26. Find the number. I have written down my find statement. I'm finding a number again, and I'm going to use n to represent the number. Now let's translate it piece by piece. When you see 4 less than, that should tell you to put a -4 out the back door, because 4 less than a number means you're going to start with your number and you're going to take away 4. Okay, so it's 4 less than what? 5 times a number. So 5 times a number is 5 times n, or 5n. Here's my equal sign. It's the word is. And then on the right side of my equation, I have the number 26. So equals 26. Now I'll solve that. Alright, when I go to solve this, I need to find my variable term. That's 5n. So to isolate that, I need to get rid of the -4. To undo a -4, we add 4. And if we do it to the left side, we must do the same thing to the right side. So I end up with 5n equals 30. Now I'm solving for n, and I've got 5 times n. So to undo the multiplication, I'm going to divide both sides by 5, and my solution is going to be 1n equals 6. Circle that. Put a number 4 and write your conclusion. The conclusion, which is step 5, would be therefore the number is 6. Before we do the next problem, I want to talk just for a second about consecutive integers, consecutive even integers, and consecutive odd integers. And to do that, let's take a look at examples. If I have consecutive integers, that's like the numbers 4 plus 5 plus 6 and 7. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, so forth. So when I say how do I get from this number to the next number, you should remember and notice that you add 1. How do I get from this number to this number? I add 1 again. How do I get from 6 to 7? I add 1 again. So every time I go from one consecutive integer to the next, I add 1. So if x is my first integer, my next integer would be x plus 1. And to get to the next one, I'd add another one. X plus 1 is the same as x plus 2. If you had to do another one, it'd be x plus 3, x plus 4, and so forth. Now, if they're even integers, that would be like 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and so forth. So when I ask, how do I get from one to the next here, I get there by adding 2. How do I get from 6 to 8? I add 2 again. How do I get from 8 to 10? I add 2 again. So that means if I start with x, to get to the next even integer, I add 2. To get to the next even integer after that, I would have to add another 2. So 2 plus 2, that's like adding 4. Alright, now here's the one where people sometimes get confused. Odd integers are 5, 7, 9, 11, and so forth. But it's not n plus 1, n plus 3, n plus 5. You still need to say, how do I get from 5 to 7? I add 2. How do I get from 7 to 9? I add 2. How do I get from 9 to 11? I add 2. That means I'm going to have x plus 2 and x plus 4 here. Now one thing that should have been written here is I need to make sure that I'm starting with an odd integer. If I start with an even, adding 2 will get me to the next even. If I start with an odd, adding 2 will get me to the next odd. Okay, here's our problem. The sum of two consecutive integers is 27. Find the integers. Now I put down my find statement for step 1, find two consecutive integers. Now from what we just previously talked about, I know that my let statements would be let x equal the first integer, and then x plus 1 would be the next consecutive integer. Notice I did not put the word let down again. You only need the word let when you're introducing a new variable. I did not introduce a new variable, and if x is the first integer, x plus 1 will be, I don't have to say let it be, it will be the next consecutive even integer. Now what I need to do is come up with the equation. So I look at my sentence and I see this key word. When I see the word sum, it means I'm going to be adding something together. So it says the sum of what? What am I adding? Two consecutive integers. So I need to put my two consecutive integers, here's one, here's the other one. Now this is a quantity, so it's a good idea to put it in parentheses. You know that because we're adding it, the parentheses aren't really going to come into play, but it's helpful to just to get a good look at what the equation is going to be in relationship to the quantities. Alright, now when I go up here, I see my is, that's my equal sign. So the sum is, and it says the sum is 27. So there's my equation. As I solve that, I notice that I can combine my like terms because I've actually got x plus 1 equals 27. That's the same as 2x plus 1 equals 27. Now, my variable term is right here. I need to isolate that, which means get rid of that plus 1. So I'm going to subtract 1 on this side and subtract 1 on this side. What I end up with then is 2x equals 26. I need to divide by 2 because I want to know what 1x is, not 2x. And when I divide, I get x equals 13. Okay, that's part of my answer. But I also have x plus 1 up here, so I need to say x plus 1 is 13 plus 1, that's 14. So altogether, those two give me step 4. Alright, and then step 5, you would write your conclusion. Therefore, the integers are 13 and 14. Now, if you had gotten x equals like 13/7 or 14.1 or something like that, there should have been a little warning bell that went off in your brain, because if you are looking for integers and your problem said to find integers, your answers better be integers. So if you get fractional answers, then you've definitely made a mistake somewhere. Okay, here's our next problem. Two angles are complementary. One angle is 16 degrees less than the other angle. Find the measure of each angle. Okay, first of all, we should probably talk about what complementary means. Complementary means the angles add up to 90 degrees. So here I've got a right angle. This little square represents right angle. And if I have two angles that add up to a right angle, which is 90 degrees, then they're complementary. So, when we look at the second sentence, it says one angle is 16 degrees less than the other angle. So I've got one angle and I've got the other angle. Now, when you have more than one quantity being represented, you need to let x be the one that you know the very least about. So if I say, what do you know about one angle? You would say, oh, it's 16 degrees less than the other angle. If I say, what do you know about the other angle? You'd probably pause for a second because you don't know. So that's what we're going to let x equal. It's going to be the other angle. So we need to represent one angle. As you get better at these, you can rename these a little bit differently, but for right now I want them to match what's in the word problem. So one angle is 16 less than the other. So if this is x, one angle is, okay, that means here it comes, 16 degrees less than. That means stick a minus 16 out the back door, less than what? The other angle. Well, the other angle is x. So this angle must be x minus 16. All right, for your equation then, for step 3, you've used all of the information in the second sentence. What you have not used yet is the fact that they're complementary. So if they're complementary, that means if I add them together, x plus x minus 16, I have to get 90. Now we solve the equation. All right, when I solve my equation, I get x equals 53 and x minus 6 is 37. In the case, I can write my conclusion. Therefore, the angles are 37 degrees and 53 degrees. You can write the little degree symbol or you can write out the word degrees. Okay. Here's our last problem. There are 4 more pigs than cows and 3 times as many chickens as cows in the barn. If there are 39 animals, how many of each type are there? Well, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, which one do I know the least about? If I say, tell me something about the number of pigs, you'd say, okay, well, there's 4 more pigs than cows. Tell me something about the number of chickens. You'd say, well, there's 3 times as many chickens as cows. If I say, tell me something about cows, there isn't something that is really obvious. You don't really know anything about the cows. So that's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with letting x be the number of cows. So we need to write down how many pigs we have and how many chickens we have based on the variable x. Now, as far as the pigs go, I've got 4 more pigs than cows. Well, 4 more means I'm going to add 4. So like if I had 10 cows, that means I have 14 pigs. So I take the number of cows and I have to add 4 because I've got 4 more pigs. Then if I look at this one, I says I got 3 times as many chickens as cows, which would mean like if I have 10 cows, I must have 30 chickens. How did I get that? I took 10 times the number of cows. So that, or excuse me, 3. 3 times x means I've got 3 times as many chickens as cows. Now, I need to use what I haven't used yet. I used the first statement to get my let. So all of this was used to find my let statements. So what I need to do is use this other sentence right here to come up with my equation. That's generally what will happen. You will use one sentence to come up with your let statements, and you will use another sentence to come up with your equation. Okay, so in this case, if there are 39 animals in all, that means I'm going to add the number of chickens, the number of cows, and the number of pigs to get 39. So then it's just a matter of filling in the blanks. Here's my cows, here's my pigs, here's my chickens. So 3, 4, I've got 5x plus 4 equals 39. I'm going to solve that by subtracting 4 from both sides. That gives me 5x equals 35. Now I need to divide both sides by 5. And it's an awful good thing that happens here when I get x equals 7, because if I got 7.5, that would mean I have 7.5 cows, and that doesn't even make sense. Okay, if I have x equals 7, so come back up here, x plus 4, that means 7 plus 4, that's 11. And then my last one is 3x. 3 times 7, that would be 21. Now, does that give me, just run a quick check, does that give me 39? 21 plus 11 plus 7? Yes, it does. Okay, here's my 4, and then I'll write my conclusion. Therefore, there are 7 cows, 11 pigs, and 21 chickens.